And I'm gonna be high.
Good on you, Donald. I'm the Rocket Man, yeah.
I'm a rocket man. And I'm gonna be
Rocket Man.
I'm a rocket man.
What have you been up to lately so I can kind of key off of a few things?
Just busier than ever, man. Like, dude, I'm the most consistent.
Really?
Like, nothing changes, man. You know where we play. You know where we place people. So,
Yep.
and we can dive into this, but it's unbelievable what a shift there has been since, let's call it, what occurred in November. Because if you really think about it, everything was wait and see. You had
was.
You had a funky market and then wait and see, but wait and see didn't start in November. That really happened in July. And so you had so much pause, if you will. And then the minute it flipped, it went like this. And again, we'll tap into this, but it doesn't mean that all these companies are hiring because of massive growth and they're blowing it out of the waters. If you want the truth, I think they're sick of mediocrity. And I think everyone took time to step back and reevaluate what they have. So even a lot of what we're doing is just leveling up. We're replacing,
Upgrading.
That's
upgrading.
it. So if there's been any blessing in disguise out there, that's really what's occurring. Companies are even doing more with less.
Yeah.
You know, and
well, that speaks to me. That's what I'm trying to do at Rocket. Is just I'm not trying to add headcount. I'm not trying to remove headcount. I just want excellent employees at every position. But the interesting thing to me is that you talk about AI, and I will bring this up in the episode. You can't use AI efficiently if you have a bunch of employees who are inefficient and just say, hey, I'm going to make each one of them a little better. You don't get a gain.
Yep.
AI is best when you have fewer people and they're excellent and they can do even more than they were able to in a day, and that's excellent. But you don't want to implement AI to make your operations better if they're only working 4 out of the 8 hours anyways.
Yeah.
What are you making more efficient? Helping them only work 2 hours a day?
Yeah, I mean, there was a podcast that we can even tap into that I shared where it said 80% of sales is going to be done through AI, because some sales doesn't need all the extra hand holding. But what it's going to do, a company may just have 4 or 5 sellers. So the big thing is going to be around the personal branding around those people, and then utilizing the AI so that they just come in for the last 20%. That's high touch, a lot of moving parts, variables, contractual, whatever the case may be. And it's just they're going to be fed. So the skill of closing is going to be at more of a premium than ever before.
And the sellers will like that more because the 4 or 5 that are there will have the whole territory instead of sharing with inadequate AEs anyways. But
man, what sales rep's dream is not to come into a full calendar and you just got to send me in to close the deal. That's like
yeah,
seller's dream, man, to have that situation. So I'm all for AI. If I can do that, shoot, I'd bring that into the recruiting world if I could do that.
For sure. Well, hey, I'll do a quick intro. Pinnacle Growth Advisors is your business, correct?
Yes.
That's the name.
Yep.
And you're the founder and CEO. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got Brent Orsuga, the founder and CEO of Pinnacle Growth Advisors. Brent, how's the day?
It's going. It's rocking and rolling here on a Monday, but glad to catch up.
Yeah, and normally I just kind of free flow into this. We just did a bunch of pre-discussion, and we just got going so quickly. I was like, we got to start and get on these topics. But I mean, give the audience a little bit of background. What does Pinnacle do? Why are you important? And I see a lot of awesome stuff on your wall, and I've seen you all over the industry, and you have 50,000 followers on LinkedIn. But what do you do? What's your company?
Yeah, so it's black and white. All we do is executive recruiting and headhunting solely within the space. Even myself, been in this since 2009, so 16 years. I dumb it down, honestly, and say that we really focus in 3 areas. So we will place people on the asset side. We do a ton, and I feel like where we have the biggest identity is when the 3PL brokerage space. And then number 3, I kind of call it freight technology and everything else. There's a lot I can put under that umbrella, from factoring to insurance to some of the new AI tools. But at the end of the day, all we do is place people in this industry.
Awesome. And you kind of were saying executive. So do you place higher level employees as your goal?
Everything, to be realistic. I mean, myself, now that I've done this so long, my desk or my book is a little bit different, but we'll do everything from, helping, I don't want to say entry level. Usually we're the step or 2 above that, all the way up to, yes, the C-suite and everything in between.
Awesome. Well, it's kind of interesting. I want to pick your brain about the market. We talked about the wait and see approach of last summer, really. But I want to start with a few questions that are like more aimed at why would a company use a recruiter at all in the 3PL space? And then also, I know a lot of people do, But what do you add as a value, and what do you think executives who aren't using a company like Pinnacle are missing out on?
Well, I think that, and we briefly touched on this, the mindset for any company has to be always be hiring. Like, I never understood a company that simply hires at a necessity, because when you hire at a necessity, sometimes you are hiring the best of the worst. It's situational. When you have a mindset of growth and we want the best and we want elite, that is a 24/7, 365 angle. So
Yeah.
for me, we partner with a lot of these companies. We don't replace their HR. We are purely an extension. We are a partner, not a vendor. So they should always want to know who's who within the marketplace. And here's the other thing too, Gabe, is I hate to say this, but it's a different approach. Let's say that you want somebody from a competitor.
Yeah.
If you go after them, it can come off a different lens. It looks a little poachy. We can go in as long as I don't have a relationship with them and kind of do the dirty work, right? So it's a different entry point and a different angle. Plus, this is all we do. So while you're running your business, my business is people. So I'm tapping shoulders behind the scenes to potentially, if it's a right fit, hand that to you on a golden platter. Why would you not want that relationship in place?
You know, I'm going to pull on a thread there. You said that people should hire not just out of necessity. Like, if you're only hiring out of necessity, you're probably not doing it right. It doesn't make sense. I'd take it a step further and say most companies, including Rocket, and I'm learning, only fire out of necessity as well.
Mhm.
And I think that people only fire when it's completely obvious that they shouldn't have that employee there. And it's the same mindset, really.
Well, I think that a lot of companies will hold on, to low producers or people that aren't really the caliber that they need. Honestly, Gabe, because a lot of people are nice, right? And business doesn't always equal nice. Results and numbers never lie. But here's the mindset to have too. If I always have a bench, if I always have people that I'm meeting, it allows me to actually make that decision potentially a lot quicker. And what it does, it allows me in theory just to trade dollars. Because if I'm
Yeah.
paying this person 65, 70, but I have someone behind them that maybe even cost me 80, well, I'm not out of pocket 80. Maybe I'm out of pocket only 5 or 10 grand. So always be hiring, always be upgrading. And that's how you build elite teams.
And I think that the mistake that I've made and that other business owners make constantly, especially in freight, is to only be hiring and adding instead of looking to upgrade
Mhm.
always. And it's the reason they do it, and the reason I've done it, and I've learned over the years, and I do it better now than before, and hopefully in 2026 I do it better than I did last year. But it's because they're nice and because they get complacent because things are going well enough
Mhm.
until they're not, right? And so I think that the mentality that we're going pretty deep here, but the mentality I would have is you can't just add team members, you have to upgrade team members.
Mhm.
And you made it a monetary value, like you're only out of pocket 5, 10, 15. But if you look at the opportunity cost, you're actually still gaining if they're a better employee.
Well, and I'm really big on kind of you are what you tolerate, right? So you are setting the intention every hire with your culture, with your standard, with your expectations. So the minute that you hold on to this mediocrity, you are basically hurting yourself because you're speaking to the floor. You're speaking to everybody else that this is actually the identity. This is what we allow or tolerate, and this is who we are. So when you study beyond freight, this is just high performance in general. Those people don't want to be around those other individuals. They are a drain. They're not an addition to me.
Yeah.
And what usually happens is low performers will drag everyone down. I'm sure you've seen these studies that Cody Sanchez and some of these podcast people have shared,
Yeah.
where you are the average of the people you hang around, and how if you are around high performers, your production increases by like 15%. And if you sit around others, it draws it down. So think again, if you have that mindset, it would really make hiring decisions differently.
Yeah, I'm going to zoom back out now a little bit more about Brent.
Yep.
Tell me about, I mean, you've had a lot of like business awards in Phoenix and all these different things, but who is Brent? Are you married? Do you have kids? Do you
Yeah.
tear
So
your Achilles heel very often? Anything like that?
yeah, just turned 48. Been married for going on 15 years. Got two little girls, 12 and 9, and this is all I do. I mean, I hate to say it, but I've kind of become pretty boring because I work out, and I come to the office and I go home. Like that's it, right? So
Yeah.
I am very, very obsessed with all those three areas to become the best version. And look, I love what I do. I mean, you have to understand when it comes to somebody's life, there's three main decisions that impact them: where they live, the relationship they're in, and where they work. That's the
Yeah.
truth. For me to have an impact on somebody's career, for me to change the trajectory and open a door that maybe they couldn't open themselves is such a gratifying feeling. Like, Gabe, I have hundreds and hundreds by now of stories of like, man, I can't believe you did this for me, or I'm so grateful you did that, right? Scaling businesses behind the scenes. It gets me out of bed every day. I don't get burnt out.
Yeah, clearly. You're kind of just killing it out there. I mean, what's your strategy as far as business growth at Pinnacle, right? So you're one, what I heard from you is that you love what you do, and that's pretty rare for people to actually love what they do. And I think you kind of nailed a few of the points of why you love it, but also I think you just love to have purpose and to impact people, whether it was in freight or a different org, a different industry, you'd still be doing it.
Yep.
You're just doing it at a very high level here. And you talked about, you just work, you have your family and you work out. But what's your strategy for business growth at Pinnacle? Do you have a large sales team yourself? I mean, obviously you built a personal brand that had to have been intentional, or maybe not at first, but now it is. Like, what's your strategy as far as growing Pinnacle, and how do you go to market?
Yeah, when it comes to the personal brand, I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, it's literally become an inbound machine. And I get asked a lot about it because it's just been all organic. And here's something that I can share with others, because I get asked this a lot. If you really study kind of what I put out there, I don't really talk a lot about specific jobs. I'm not saying, hey, I'm hiring in this role in Chicago for 150 grand, or out in Detroit, I need this sales manager. You're really not going to see that. I was always taught that people do business with people they like and trust. So before I pitch them on something, they have to know what they're dealing with. So in order to do the branding the proper way, you have to almost become a magnet. Well, who is this guy? So you're going to see me posting about hiking, right? Pinnacle Peak, the mountain. You're going to see me playing basketball. Everyone's seen those videos. You're going to see podcasts and books, and me going to EO events, and me just out there hustling at conferences and going to, all these various things, because ultimately the mindset was, I want people to say, you know what? He seems like a good dude. He seems like a good guy. Then I'll be able to back it up from the business standpoint, because I know my stuff. Yeah. So that's worked really well as far as that goes. As far as the team goes, where I've seen the most success too is actually in bringing people in from the industry that have actually done the role. Yeah. Like if somebody's been on the customer sales side, on the carrier side, as an account manager, think about the lens they can come from when they speak to candidates. I'm one of you. I've sat in your seat. I know what you deal with. The other thing to understand with how we operate, I've always taken more of what I call the talent advisor approach, meaning that one of the biggest pet peeves I have with recruiters is they get on the phone with somebody and they want to pitch them. Oh, you're the perfect candidate. I have the ideal role for you. Number one, we've never spoken, so I don't know anything about you or what you want.
Yeah, just looked at your LinkedIn or whatnot.
Yeah. And it's an assumptive state. And number two, I probably don't know as much about the company as I desire. So when you take the approach of, hey, let's just have a conversation, tell me more about what you're doing, ultimately not what I have, but what do you want? And I can take a call 4 or 5 different ways. That's where I get dangerous as well.
Yeah, I think that, one, to speak to your personal brand, I don't know if maybe I'll ask too, but no one could have set out to say, hey, I'm going to build the brand exactly as well as you did it. But when did you start it? What year was it? Do you know?
Well, I started Pinnacle back in 2014, but I think when really things started to catapult was back in 2018. So now going on 7 years is when LinkedIn first turned on the video feature. And video, video was really the game changer, because to this day, I can't tell you how many people I engage with that will say this: I don't like how I look. I don't like how I sound. I'm super reluctant to do that. And I hear this and I'm thinking, if you don't have that, I hate to say it, confidence or swag, how are you going to convey that to customers or clients or people you're engaging with? You have to just be able to put yourself out there. And it's repetitions at this point. You've done a lot of content. You've done a lot of video. By this point, it's second nature. Like, I don't fear it. And I think a lot of people hold themselves back without even trying. And never forget this quote. This is the real truth. You either consume or you create. That's it. And so most people, as they go through their feed, they're simply consuming others. Why would you not want to be a common person in the feed if you do this the right way? The doors that it will open is incredible.
Yeah, I can attest to that at a smaller scale than you, but same thing. I mean, I look at my first videos I ever made on LinkedIn in 2021. They were not good and by my standard now,
Yep.
but repetition in everything in life makes you better at it. And you can maybe not perfect it, but you can get comfortable doing it. But then if I just look at the opportunities it's created just because I made videos on LinkedIn,
Yep.
and then, now I'm doing a podcast and you're on my podcast. We didn't know each other except for through the conference. We worked together a little,
Mhm.
but no one would come on my podcast if I hadn't first built a brand and a business before that. So like there's all these steps you could take. Not everybody has the vision to map it out. And I'm not saying I did because I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I started. But I think that most people, and you kind of talked about creator and consumer,
Mhm.
I think it's like 1% only are creators.
Well, there was
And
a
98% or 99% are just consumers.
well,
That's all we do.
that's
Consume.
the thing about LinkedIn is I just saw a stat which blew my mind is there are 1 billion users.
Oh my God.
Oh no, here listen to this, it gets crazier. Only 30,000 users have over 30,000 followers. Think about that. It is the wild, wild west still. So the earlier that somebody can get in, and again, there's different. One of the best, again, you know me, I listen to a lot of podcasts every morning, but I heard something recently that really resonated with me. Don't try to be an influencer, just be a person of influence. And that really stuck with me because I think a lot of people are so focused. What is an influencer, right? A lot of times it's self-serving. Look at me, look at my lifestyle, look at my car, look at my abs, right? Whatever the case may be. It's for dopamine hits of likes.
Yep.
When I become a person of influence, especially as we talk about this amazing industry that we play in, what if I started to share industry insights? What if I started to share books and podcasts and anything that I found of value to give to others? Now that's going to be a magnet because people are going to want to gravitate and expect that. Where do you think things are going to lean more, right? And that's the only thing I see out there now. I still see people going a little bit of the other way. And if they change that mindset, influence, not influencer, I think things would be elevated.
Yeah. And I also think that most attribute, and actually this is because they've seen it to be true, that there's a personality that does videos and then there's a different person that shows up in their normal daily life. But if you're actually authentic the whole time, and I can attest that Brent is, I've met him in person a few times.
Yep.
It's the same dude. He's just as intense and he's just as right. But like people have been burned by influencers, like they see a different, that's not their car. That's not their Lambo. It's rented. It's all for clicks and likes, but LinkedIn, it'll, the light will shine anyways. So you might as well, if you're actually going to be authentic and post your content, there's never been a better time actually, because now you can do it at scale with AI and you can do more with just one person. Before you had to figure out how to do all the video editing and it was overwhelming. And now any person can take their phone out and still get the captions and the edits and all the stuff that the fancy agencies used to only have access to.
Well, and think about it. Let's step back and come from the recruiter lens. I live on LinkedIn. That is hands down the number one place that we live. So you have two approaches. Either I can see you and be like, who is this person? They're everywhere, right? So they're gravitating me towards them.
Yeah.
Or I have to go find you behind the scenes. So you have to think it's not just about clients and customers and vendors and all this other stuff. What about people like me that all of a sudden may be able to tap into you quicker? So again, if you do it the right way, it can be something in your back pocket that is essential. I hate to say this, but it is kind of the new resume. Honestly, Gabe, I don't even send resumes. I don't deal with it. I care about
I haven't looked at one for a while. I go
care
online.
about the person, not the paper. So LinkedIn and this brand is now a digital resume that I can send to somebody. Here's the other thing. Everyone loves to put a face to a name. Welcome to the non-HR reality world. It allows you to put a face to a name. So I'm very conscious of the brand that I built on there, the header under my picture. How clean is my picture? Again, what am I putting out? I've seen people self-sabotage themselves. Some topics you still don't touch. You start to touch.
There's no reason to.
There's no reason to. That's not the time and place and platform to do that. I don't care what you think. It doesn't impact me.
Take it to X.
Companies do care because people underestimate how much of this social media stuff goes on behind the scenes. I have sent Facebook family pictures of people. I've gone on their Instagram. Hey, check out what this person does. They're into CrossFit. Look what they do on the weekend. I'm trying to show again who the person is, because the business side should be able to take care of itself.
Yeah. Let's get into a few topics here. So the reason I do this podcast besides it being self-serving, because it helps me connect with business owners, and I'll admit that, is to whenever a business owner or an expert like Brent is on the show, I try to pull out what I think your strengths are in the industry better than everybody else. You do a lot and you do recruiting, but I asked about social media because you do it so much better than everybody else in your space. And you've been doing it for a while and it's paid off.
Yep.
Another thing that I think you have a great sense of is you talk to so many businesses. And so if I was interviewing a CEO of a brokerage, I'd ask him questions about how to build the brokerage and how he did it in headcount. But you talk to dozens, if not hundreds, of 3PLs and brokerages, and you know the executives. So you've built your own business and run your own payroll, but you've got an insight into a lot of big companies, small companies. You've seen some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So would you say it's a generalization, but because you're in recruiting and it's related, would you say that most 3PLs right now are overstaffed or understaffed for this market? And then we'll back into why that might be.
It's been an interesting, if you really study 4 years, right? Because you had 21 and 22 where what I jokingly call steroid baseball. Everybody was winning. So everybody
Mark
was kind
McGuire, Sammy Sosa, Barry Bonds. It
mass
was
hiring,
the era.
mass hiring, everything else, taking gambles, getting creative on hires. God, we just need people. There's so much freight, but I wasn't selling, I was servicing. So in reality, a lot of people became account managers, not sellers. 23 and 24 was the first challenging market. It wasn't, some people still won, don't get it wrong, but it was challenging and different market over that time. So I think if you study 24, a lot of people had the chance to slow down, really evaluate who they are. And right now, we talked about this earlier, I'm not seeing a very big appetite anymore for big headcount. Mediocrity has been exposed. Companies are now doing more with less and noticing that it's working.
Yeah. So I would say that a traditional recruiter might say, oh, it's a bad market for us. But I would say for you and some of the other top recruiters, you have the best talent, right? That's what you're selling, is access to the best talent and people, and you've vetted them and you're doing it for, and it's a service. It's a partnership. If I'm looking at running Rocket today, I don't want to be overstaffed, but I also I want to just upgrade everybody I have. If they're not excellent, I need the most excellent. And there is obviously a fine line between just ability and then ability to work with others. And so I'm generalizing excellent, but there is a lot of nuance to it.
Well, and
But
we've gotten busier because of exactly what you're saying. I mean, if you want the truth too, I think the whole Freight 101 model kind of went away because companies were evaluating. There's a time and a place for that. But now for me to go pay someone 50 grand, I'm probably going to lose money for 6 to 8 months. Well, that doesn't feel good all of a sudden. So instead of taking a bet on two guys or gals at 50 grand, why don't I just go get a proven producer at 100 and the dollars are the dollars of the dollars? So you've seen a lot of that shift go on as well.
In the businesses that survived or thrived, either or, 23 and 24 are now based on necessity, right? We talked about hiring and firing on necessity. Based on necessity, understanding, hey, I need to do more with less, but in order to do that, I can't just throw AI at it. I first have to look at the employee level. At least that's what I'm doing. I want to implement AI at Rocket at scale. I have to, and I am. And I think I'll be a really early mover in 3PL compared to the industry, and it'll be a huge advantage for us. But there's no reason to implement AI into a role that's only working 4 out of 8 hours already. You're just going to have them be able to work 2.5 hours now. You're not getting an efficiency gain. And it's because either the role doesn't need to exist or the person who's in it is not excellent. And so AI will just make them almost above average. But AI for me and other executives at the company, I use it because I can't get all the work I want to get done in 8 hours. And so I use it to get the rest of it done. And it's amazing efficiency. And the stuff I'm working on is super high level. I mean, a lot of companies, and there's a lot of them in the space that are startups, are like, hey, let's automate load building. Let's automate carrier sales. And I'm like, you're automating the lowest of the companies right now. And you're getting an efficiency gain and you're replacing in effect $40,000 to $60,000 salaries. But what if you could get your guy who's making 200,000 and he's doing the work of 4 people now, 4 of him? That's a bigger gain in AI than it is to automate some tasks.
Look, and AI is here. We'd be naive to say it's not coming. It's not relevant. It's, even at Manifest, you saw what I saw, right? You go down and there's so many companies. I'm like, who are you guys? But I also think we have to realize that we are the guinea pig generation around this. Nobody has mastered it. Nobody's figured it out. And so I think that we're just collectively have to navigate these waters. But look, I'll go old school. Business is business is business. It's still relationships. I think a handshake and a steak dinner and all those little things still compound and go a long way. It doesn't mean you can't plug it in and speed things up, but at the end of the day, I don't know how you fully remove that. So I have confidence in those interpersonal skills that I still think can battle through some of those things.
Yeah, in fact, it'll probably on the other end of the spectrum be the most important things,
Mhm.
just like it used to be. But it'll be a lot of orgs won't be doing the steak dinners and the handshakes at all, and
Yep.
those who are will now be the differentiator. Whereas now it might be the few leading edge companies are implementing AI. C.H. Robinson, for example, spent $1 bajillion and
Yep.
cut half their workforce to do AI, and they got a lot of heat for it. I'm not even sure it worked out for them, but they did it.
Mhm.
Now it'll be okay. Well, we have a relationship and we do the handshakes and the steak dinners, and you have to use AI. So should you be, calling every carrier for a track and trace? Probably not. You got to get the updates, but the truckers don't want you to call them anyways. So find a way to make it useful.
And
That's my
this industry is just, it's different. I mean, unless you're in it, people don't fully understand. It is still
yeah.
old school, blue collar. I mean, I have gone to offices with bullhorns on desk and everything in between, right? So it's just
Yeah.
and I'll say this too, some regions I feel will be harder to adapt or slower to adapt than others as well. It doesn't mean they're going to be left in the dust. I mean, this is the crazy thing about this industry. It is so unsaturated, right? This is not Coke and Pepsi. There are 15,000 brokerages. I mean, there's so many people. This is what blows my mind. Even at Manifest, I will run into companies. Oh, tell me a little bit about you guys, whatever. Oh, we're $400 million. And I'm like, no offense. I've never even heard of you guys.
Yeah. How did you do that without being
And this
known?
happens every single week. I'll get these calls, and it's because they own a little segment. They have amazing relationships, usually privately held, and they just stay in their lane and do their thing. And that's what's crazy again about this industry.
And the interesting thing about the new wave in this industry is everything has to be fast. But really, all those companies that are 200, 400 million have done it for 10, 15 years, and they just stayed on the same course, and it compounded over time.
Mm-hmm.
They were just investing in the S&P the whole time, right? That just, hey, this is our lane. I think that because technology has evolved so quickly in other sectors and has been started to be injected into freight, although there are several companies that took that tech forward approach and failed in the last few years, and tech only approach, I'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just the tech enabled that were really never tech enabled. It was just a bunch of people, which is funny to say.
Right.
But they take that approach, and then the companies who just stayed in their lane the whole time and grew organically can weather any market. It's almost like the same business principles that governed 100 years ago govern today, which is you have to be profitable, you have to be sustainable, you have to have a good culture, and you have to have good relationships and networks so that when you need a new hire, you can get one. So let's take it a step towards the market.
Yep.
I talked about the fact that I think, and you kind of agreed, most companies are not looking to add a bunch of people. It's not a headcount rush. We had the Great Resignation. What was that? 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's kind of like the upgrade, right? You want to get better employees and do more with less, the more with less.
Yep.
But I mean, you have to, and I have to pick your brain about this, or otherwise whoever ends up listening to this will be like, he didn't do it justice. There's been all this buildup all the way 2023, late 23, all of 24. The market's going to flip. It's going to flip hard. We're here for a turnaround. Be prepared. And now that it hasn't exactly flipped and everybody's still in wait and see mode, can you walk me through kind of what we talked about earlier, where last November was wait and see, and even maybe last July? But what has that been like on the recruiting side? And I really want to ask, what have you seen from other 3PLs and asset base of what their decision-making looks like? What are they waiting for? What are they talking about? What does it sound like out there as far as a turnaround?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, we have to be very conscious that what one position drives everything else. What one position, in theory, keeps the lights on? Sales, sales, sales. So you talk to 10 recruiters, they're going to tell you the same answer, right? That is the main feeder. I do pay attention to when I get the phone calls for the operational positions because it does tell me things are a little healthier. I am not fully seeing that. They're more one-offs. So sales is still going to be the most dominant thing. And I think too, it's the one position that simply can't go away. You can't
Ever.
continue to grow, scale without more customers. So this sounds crazy, but again, I'm giving you the non-HR lens. I've even seen generational demands or shifts occur where we'll even get with companies that be like, you know what? I don't actually want somebody who came in 2020 and beyond, because I don't want to have to take somebody on who this is their first market. All of a sudden, you go get me someone who's 34, 38, 42. Well, they've gone through some cycles. They're going to have what we talked about, repetitions. They're going to go through some hard markets. They know how to navigate these things. So I feel like that is a better bet than taking that on with somebody younger. Now, I don't want to get too generational about distraction and the phones and some of the stuff I've seen. But again, Gabe, this is the real non-HR phone calls and stuff that I get. So I'm just trying to share it and be transparent with people, because if you are in that category, I personally don't think it's ever been an easier time to win. People are so distracted. People can't get their head out of their phones. If you literally look around your brokerage right now and you just say, hey, who are the 7, 8, 10 guys I'm competing against? You should not be that feared if you want the truth. And if you can separate and win amongst those, you have to understand the world is your oyster. People are begging us for killers, for dogs, for hungry people. They're just questioning, where the heck are they? Sometimes I ask the same question.
Yeah, I think in a world, especially an age of social media, we talked about consuming versus creating. I mean, I was at church yesterday, and our pastor was talking about what, you kind of marinate in your own environment, and whatever you marinate in is what you're going to taste like. Same thing on a brokerage floor. If you're marinating in looking up leads and doing research and scrolling Instagram and scrolling LinkedIn, and you're on LinkedIn just to watch, and you throw a few comments on there, it's what you're going to taste like. No one's going to know that you're the killer, because you're not. And then on the flip side, it's never been easier, if you are that killer, to be found. Just post about it, and don't go out there and post, I'm the best sales rep that ever lived, but you just tell stories. Yeah, this week I was talking to this client and I came up with this solution. Just share the story. If you share a bunch of stories about a bunch of clients, people are going to realize that you have a lot of clients. I wonder how you got them.
Look, I love some swag. I love confidence. You want that in a seller.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times they're going to have the self-belief, they're going to have the self-discipline, and in theory, they should have the habits, because you can't really just pop your head out there and be a talking head. Like, if you're going to have the confidence to put that out there, you better be able to back it up. So I honestly don't hate it. What I don't like is the people that aren't justifying it that are doing that, because it's literally, this is what, again, people don't talk about this. It's really hard for me nowadays not to send one text behind the scenes. What's the real story? What's the real deal with this person? And all I'm looking for, and I even frame this up in my calls, hey, there's no right or wrong answer here. If we go fork in the road and I go sales left, account management right, where are you the most dangerous? Guess how many people lean towards AM? Done. I'm checked out. When somebody tells me sales and I'm hungry and I want this and all the, man, where do you want to go, right? Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a proof positive when I'm running Rocket, and I mean, I've been doing it now almost 5 years. Mm-hmm. And every time an employee has asked me for a promotion or wanting to do more for the org, I always, even if they're not in sales, I say, well, you could bring revenue. And if you bring revenue, you can get paid as much as you want, and you're going to be more valuable to me and to Rocket than you were before. And that's what I always say. And we only have 3 sellers right now. Mm-hmm. And we do a lot of revenue for 3 sellers. Our revenue per head is well over 2 million for our whole org. And that's something we can do because we have an efficient outbound motion and we've got a bunch of tools, and I think we're good at that. But everybody, that's just proof positive. If you lean towards sales, you'll kill it in this market, and you can work at any company you want. And if you want a promotion, go to sales.
Here's the easiest formula. You want a promotion? Go become so undeniably good at what you do that there's only 2 paths you can go. Either the company has to pay to keep you, or somebody else will. But you're not so good at what you do, neither one of those options are realistic. So you should never have to ask for a promotion, because you should be like, oh my goodness, this person's crushing it. What do you need? I'm going to lean into you. You're doing an amazing job. I don't want to lose you. How can I support you? How can I keep you, right? So many companies want to do exit interviews after somebody left. What about a stay interview? When was the last time you went to your high performer and be like, hey, you are cranking it. Where can I better support you so that you continue to do what you do. But here's where companies mess up, Gabe. Instead of leaning into their high performers who are driving revenue, where's most of their energy and focus? They're pouring
Fixing the low performers.
They're pouring so much energy into people that will never get it, never produce, never crank. And guess what? My eye's off the ball. When your eye is off the ball, guess who isn't? Mine. How do you think I go in there and steal these people away? It's real.
And you know, another, like, it's as if you're speaking to my business, because I think the reason we've been successful is I was founder-led sales. I was the top sales rep for a $1 billion LTL brokerage. They were only 700 million at the time, but I was the number one seller when I was 25. And then I started Rocket because they didn't want to keep me.
Yeah.
I asked for more. I never asked for promotion. I just asked for more work. I said, hey, can I do more work? Can I bring on more sales? Can I start a division of just e-commerce? And they took me for granted, one, but they were paying attention to the other parts of the org that were broken.
Yep.
And, you know, besides the occasional, hey, come ride on the boat in, you know, Minnetonka and I'll show you a good time for a day, it was crickets. And I was, you know, they had 1,000 sales reps or maybe 100 stations and agents and a bunch of direct sales. And every month the email would come through, Gabe Pankinen was this top sales rep again. And every month I would get ignored.
But here's the thing. I guarantee you, there is not 1,000 people that intentionally raised their hand and said, I want to do more, I want to get better, and I want to earn more income in this environment that you have created. Because people will stay with you as long as they personally feel that their hopes, dreams, and ambitions can fit under your umbrella. The minute that stops, I'm out. And so that is, to me, self-sabotage that they would do that. Again, you go show me a company's top 10 list. How much are they being courted and massaged and told how great they are and given all the resources? You guys just keep cranking, man. You guys stay on the hamster wheel. Let me just feed you. But no, I'm focused so much on the other stuff that is a waste of energy. And this is, again, nobody talks about this, but where do you think my focus is? Do you not think that I'm the one touching those top 10 and I'm just waiting for a company to mess up and then boom, let's go? This is what we do.
This is the market. And also it's just a testament to, you can never be too sure, because that's my mentality and I'm still not doing a good enough job of it. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Yeah. And I have been spending, you know, way too much time trying to optimize what shouldn't be. Well, as Elon would say, don't optimize something that shouldn't exist. Mm-hmm. Right. And I'll leave it at that, because that's as succinctly as you can say it. But if you're not paying attention to the top performers and pouring into them, and I think that I've been successful because of that, because I was on the other side of it. So I may be overcompensated towards, like, hey, whoever the top performers are, that's my focus. Now I got another wake-up call, Brent. Well, so thanks for coming on the show to help me run my business better.
But I just made a video the other day where I'm like, let me just give you real-life examples from February of why I snagged the people I did. It wasn't just because I went and got them more money. That's always going to be part of the game. There was always other variables. People were moving. Compensations were capped. They removed operational support. Again, these are self-induced items. And I don't deal with average Joes. I'm not a job placement company. I don't take somebody unemployed that I found on Indeed and go sell that to a company. I only deal with people that are currently producing at a high level, because that, in theory, you got to remember how we operate. Companies are paying a premium to get something that they probably can't get on their own. So I only want to hand deliver that to them.
Yeah. And you want repeat clients.
Of course.
So you want to provide the first one to be successful, then they'll give you the next.
But all those companies did something that I could then find a pain point and solve for them somewhere else.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like I'm just pitching Pinnacle, but I do think Brent's a great guy to work with if you're in the industry. Mm-hmm. But the idea of using a recruiter and a firm like Pinnacle is that I was actually listening to Joe Rogan's podcast over the weekend, and he had this guy, I think his name is Jason Hughes. No, it might not be Jason, but he's a hypnotist or a mentalist, mm-hmm. right? And he was talking about, like, he worked for the CIA and he would, like, split people's personalities and all of these different crazy psychology tricks. But he was talking about cult recruiting and all these crazy psychology tricks. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that came up that's relevant to this conversation, and I'll bring it back, this is a far stretch, but I think the audience will get it, is that there's this guy who was trying to recruit for the CIA to do like a bunch of different experiments or whatnot.
Mhm.
And they needed to find impressionable people, right? And they couldn't figure out, they couldn't scale what type of person is impressionable and highly suggestible. And there's all kinds of tricks to find it. But what this guy ended up doing was short circuiting it and just kind of cutting through the line. He would go to like a comedy club for hypnotists, like there'd be a comedic hypnotist on, and they would choose people from the crowd because they're experts at figuring out who's suggestible.
Yep.
He'd wait till after the show and then he'd approach those people. It was pre-selected for him, which is kind of what most CEOs, and I've learned this myself too many times. I think I know good talent and I think I can vet and I think I can run the company and the squeaky wheel and the high performers and then find more talent and attract it. And it's just impossible sometimes. But you're out there, I should just cheat and use somebody like you because you already know what you're looking for. You have a book and you know what a top performer might sound like compared to what a top performer looks like on LinkedIn and isn't a top performer.
And let's stay there because I think this is very important for companies to realize. A lot of companies are asking somebody who is not a high performer in themselves to go out and find that. You're asking a 6 to go find a 10. They don't speak the same language. They are not one of the same, right? And so this is a big problem. One of the posts that I did that absolutely blew up was I said, go find the talent. Where are high performers that have certain habits and behaviors hanging out? Me and my buddy one day at 5 a.m. on a Saturday at Lifetime, no one was even in there. I'm like, dude, just hand me, here's my phone. Just go film this for a second. And I'm like, don't you think certain profiles are here? They probably didn't just go out and burn it down the night before. They're waking up on their own. They're driving there in the dark when no one else is making them do that. They're setting up their day because they believe in win the morning, win the day, right? Yeah. Those are behaviors and patterns that should be able to transfer because now I know how you're wired. I know how you're built. How many people are just as they're out and about in the everyday setting looking and being conscious of, Gabe, it could be a waiter. It could be someone at a car wash. It could be someone at the gym. It could be someone that you're going to pick something up on. So your skill and ability to understand human psychology and how people are wired is how you're going to be able to even attract, like you said, people into you.
Yeah. And I think that part of it is you have to be able to not have a 6 trying to recruit a 10, right? But I mean, even for me, I was a 10 as a seller, right? Not as a business owner because I had to figure all that out on my own. There's no guidebook and I'm working my way. But I thought I knew what top sales talent was, but who am I kidding? I only was a great seller. That doesn't make me a great talent predictor. And I've been wrong so many times on, hey, that person, I'm going to take them. Their book's going to transfer. Never did. Or they actually were a seller. No, they were a manager and their company did everything for them. Or, and I'm not trying to be harsh on past employees. Like I just made mistakes. It wasn't a good environment for them sometimes too. But I always thought I knew. And I said, hey, that person's going to come produce here. And it's not just the tangible skills. You have to be able to find intangibles. And if you can't recruit for that yourself, you got to outsource it for sure.
And we can stay there because this is one of the things about the industry. Just because somebody was really good in a $1 billion machine and logo doesn't mean they have transferable skills. In a lot of those organizations, they are honestly, you're more set up to win than fail. And so
that's how they got that way.
So what I always look for is tell me about how you operate, how you generate leads. What is your own sales process? Because forget the books of business, those skill sets should be able to transfer. So whatever jersey I'm wearing, I'm not going to lose those skills. And it's going to help me ramp up a lot quicker. If you're taking bets because somebody came from $1 billion logo with 3 initials, you're going to lose because they're a product of the product. They're Baylor quarterbacks, right? They're really good in that system, but they get exposed very fast. And I have 100 stories of people that have oversold and underdelivered.
Oh, I mean, it's just one, I had to learn through the school of hard knocks this lesson. So hopefully if people are listening to this, that they just try to avoid this in the first place. Don't recruit somebody from $1 billion company and then think they're going to do well in your startup.
Yeah.
They might, but don't recruit them because they were successful there. Recruit them for other intangibles. You have to be able to find other reasons that they would fit. Because in a startup, I found all too often that people who have been successful in one place, maybe there was an entire department dedicated to rate analysis and an entire department dedicated to an ROI proposal, and they had to then just have the relationship and close the deal. At Rocket, you have to be able to do all of it to close the deal, because we don't have an entire department for just data analysis, right? You got to be able to ad lib.
Here's a great question to ask. Did people do business with you because of the name on the front of the email or the back?
Interesting.
You know, because if they're it's not that hard to put on a brown uniform and sell UPS. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Just being real, man.
Yeah.
So,
if the company doesn't even know you exist, then how are you selling it?
what were your entry points? How did you build this relationship? What seeds did you plant, right? And I think too, even when it comes to sales, I think people grossly underestimate the amount of contact that they need to make, seeds that they need to plant to win at a high level. Everyone wants shortcuts. Yeah. Everyone wants AI. Everyone wants inbound leads, when it doesn't always work that way. So again, I always try to study that. And here's a question too. The answers are always in the questions. I think companies ask terrible questions. If I've been on interviews and I've heard people say stuff and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Well, let me ask you this. If you were a dog or a cat, how would you have handled this situation? Tell me about a time you faced adversity and how you navigated these waters. If you could be the moon or the ocean, how would you handle this? I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? Oh, man, I'm going to write a book someday because this is real stuff.
I could tell you didn't make it up because I don't know how you would make that up.
You talk about a 6 being a 10. That's like a -15 asking a high performer. Like, can you imagine being a high performer and being asked these insane questions? Why don't you ask me questions like this? What do you do at 5 a.m.? What are you doing at 7 p.m. after you put the kids down? What does a typical weekend look like? You walk me through a Sunday at 3 o'clock. What are you doing? This has nothing to do with business. I'm trying to understand behaviors, habits, and who the individual is. When was the last time you competed?
In anything, yeah.
Anything, man. When was the last time that you did compete and took a loss? What was the emotion that you had around that?
Yeah.
When was
I lost my mother-in-law at Christmas up a left, right, center with the quarters game. I was pretty upset.
You get mad, right? When was the last time you saw something on social media that triggered you? And why did it trigger you? Did you see someone winning? You see what I mean? Like, dude, I just asked so many different questions that had nothing to do with business. And now I feel like I'm a individual that studies human psychology because I'm trying to crawl inside your brain and understand wiring.
Yep.
I enjoy it, man. I love it.
Dude, I'm just extracting value out of you today because you are just giving it away. This is awesome. Here's something I'll ask you. I'm going to point it more towards Pinnacle and Brent.
Yep.
You know, I often ask these questions in a different format, but it just seemed to flow. When you're looking at companies, an employee, right, that you're trying to recruit,
mm-hmm.
and then you have a company that you want to place them with,
mm-hmm.
there's a transaction there. Someone's losing an employee, someone's gaining it. So someone is quitting, whether they got fired. Obviously, they're not working with you or they got fired because you're not on Indeed. But let's talk it through it this way. What should orgs do to stop their employees from getting fired? We already talked about that, right? Or from quitting, right? From leaving. You got to pay attention to them. But have you ever had it happen at Pinnacle, or what's the hardest decision where you had to say, hey, I lost somebody and I should have paid attention? Or I'll ask the flip. You had to fire somebody that wasn't going to get the job done at Pinnacle. Have you ever had to go through that?
Yeah, of course, because I think in recruiting, you're always going to face a situation where some people just perform at a high level and they always think they can do it on their own. And I've embraced that, man. Like, actually, I've taken a different approach. You know, they often talk about like the Bill Walsh tree of recruiting, and you have all these people that have kind of gone on and done their own thing. I actually find it very rewarding, as weird as this may sound, when people have been with you, learned and been taught so much that they now have the confidence to do something on their own at a high level. Because if there's no conflict of interest, why would I not want that for somebody? Why would I not want somebody's experience to be like, wow, I ran with him for a while and I learned so much that now I can transfer it to support my own family at a higher level, and whatever field I'm going to play in, that's a rewarding feeling. That's much better than, oh, forget that guy, you know, blah, 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 blah. So when you learn to embrace it and come from that lens, I think that is a good thing. Number two, the hardest thing that I've had to go through at Pinnacle is, look, I have standards and expectations. I have a clear definition of what I think is good. And if you don't show that, how can I then show that to a client and put my stamp of approval or name behind it? Because in recruiting and a lot of things, you're only as good as two things. Number one, the logos that you can take and represent to your candidates. And number two, you are what you show. You are what you show. So if I show mediocrity, that now becomes the identity that we're known for. The reason that companies don't push back when we present people is because they know it's gone through our little fingers. And again, I've signed off on it. This person is worthy of me showing you. When you have that identity in the marketplace, it goes a long way.
And the hardest thing you've had to do is say, hey, this is the standard. And you've had to let people go if they're not at that standard.
But we're not reaching, you're not presenting me, or for some reason showing me people that are up to what I'm going to call the Pinnacle standard. So I'm not saying that we're Alabama football, but you have to have that mindset.
You have to try.
You have to create that standard and expectation, because again, if I allow it to be lessened, well, I'm going down to their level as opposed to bringing them up to mine. Who am I benefiting? You want to be able to bring people up, not go down to their level, because the minute that I go down, and this is sales in general, I am lowering the temperature in the room, not raising it. I want people who are going to raise it and play at a higher level, not cool things off.
Yeah, I think Alex Hormozzi just said this. You want to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. Yep. So you want to create the environment, and it takes a ton of energy for a thermostat to maintain a temperature, whereas thermometer just flows with it. Yeah. But you're the thermostat, and you have to create an environment where this is the temperature, or obviously in that analogy. I think that you did a really nice job of explaining why you had to have the standard, because that's what your customers expect. Mm-hmm. And if you don't meet the standard, then you're risking your customer relationships. It was very clear how you laid it out. I think brokerage leaders are more diluted. They're like, well, we can have people behind the scenes, or not quite so customer facing, or marketing or sales. They can just be average as long as we have some high performers. But if you think about it, especially in 3PL world, in this environment, there is no competitive advantage other than executing at a higher level than another. I talk about LTL a lot, obviously. For the last 20 years, since Global Trans started, I guess maybe it's only been like 18 years, but since Global Trans and Echo Global Logistics brought LTL, Expedia style rate shopping, every different big 3PL has had differing LTL rates, right? There's been tiers, and there's been volume incentives. That has rapidly evolved to like the top 5 to 10 players have the same rates with the same carriers, the 3PL channel. I'm not supposed to say these things out loud type of thing. Now it's like, okay, you have better technology. So for the past 5 years, it was like, who's got the best TMS to be able to procure it? And now that's all the same. And so now what is it? It's execution. And if your employees are less than excellent and they're interacting with your customers, that's the same thing as your customers seeing somebody who's less than excellent on your team. And that's now your brand. Customer service, sales. If the seller isn't high level and they're not explaining your solution well, you're killing revenue before it ever got there, because you're not landing the deal, not because your product isn't good, but because your sales rep couldn't explain it.
And here's what you have to remember. Breakups are okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make them a bad person. The only bad thing is the fit. And me holding on to that person is actually selfish and doing them injustice, because in reality, they are not set up to win here. So they're going to have frustrations. They're going to have emotions, and nobody's going to win. So, even when I see companies put people on PIPs, I'm like, you kind of know when you know. I would love to see the stats on how many people have been put on a PIP and gotten through it. What's the point? Me feeling good for 30 days that I'm going to coach somebody? And that's another post I did. Coach them up or coach them out. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad guy. It doesn't make you a bad person. I don't care about you. It's not that. We mutually have to have a hard conversation. Is this the right locker room for you? Because if it's not the right locker room for you, you're not going to win, which in turn, I'm not going to win. I would rather figure that out collectively. And if we need to move on, I will have your back. And there's nothing more than I want you to see you win somewhere else. It's just not going to be here.
Yeah, and then you do a generous severance, and you take care, you do right by your people, but
all you can do.
Yeah, that's all you can do. And then if you have to even look at it a different angle, the way I look at it is that I'm responsible as the founder and CEO of Rocket to make sure everybody always gets paid.
Mhm.
That's my number one job, is to make sure all of my employees get paid, and then the rest follows. But if I am not taking care of the company in a way that we have low performers, and then that is then putting in jeopardy the success of the entire company, you have to think just as much about the people that are going to stay at the org than the people that you part ways with, because you have to take care of the people that are staying here too. And I think that goes to the squeaky wheel gets the grease,
Mhm.
a lot of pips, a lot of that. And it's really, unfortunately, and I've learned this, so I'm not trying to be, have an ego on this, because I had to learn it the hard way for 5 years. It's almost always to make you feel better about the decision. You've already made the decision. You just want you want to say you gave it all you had. You want to have another point, data point. But if you've already made the decision, I've learned it's best to just do it. And that person is better off for it too, as long as you do it the right way and you take care of your people on the way out as you do on the way in.
I think the worst thing that happens is when you do cut somebody and the whole team steps up and be like, oh, thank goodness. It was about time. We did not like this
Oh
person.
my goodness. I hate it.
Thanks, guys. Right. But I think, too, another thing that people discount is if you are always hiring, if you are always interviewing or maybe bringing in people or letting them know, you guys won't believe who I'm going to meet. Right. You don't have to go into the nitty gritty. I am speaking to my team that I am serious. I am about growth. I am going to continue to elevate us. And my job as a leader and a founder is simply to bring in the best people. So put that on my shoulders and let me do that. What a lot of companies do is Sarah leaves, holy smokes, we don't know what to do. Someone go post a job. And over the next 4 or 6 weeks, I'm scouring through average people, and I'm probably going to make a decision of the best of the worst because I need to fill that seat.
Best of the worst is the best way to put that. When you have a job to fill, you take the best of the worst.
When I'm always hiring, when I have a bench, when I'm upgrading, crap, I wasn't expecting this person to be as good as they do. Let me look at the leaderboard. I think I can trade those dollars. That is a completely different elevation and culture that you are establishing. That's been a big shift since 24. I'm telling you, there's not a lot of appetite for mediocrity. That stuff is gone.
Yeah, I think that I have that same appetite, and I want to say it's because I'm a forward-thinking business leader, but the fact that that's a trend is the market has dictated that, right? 23 was very tough for a lot of people.
Mhm.
You made it through that. 24 was supposed to be better, and it wasn't. And 25 is supposed to be even better, and it might not be. And so now it's like, well, you need dogs. You need people in the trenches. You need to do more with less, and everybody has to do that to compete. But it is like, from my viewpoint, we're growing faster than ever and we're more profitable, and I like that. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do more with less.
No, and one of the questions I look for when I talk to people is, why didn't something work? And I'm looking, honestly, I ask these questions intentional. It's like being an interrogator. I'm looking for the lens that they take. Is it the company's fault? Well, it's the market is down. The company didn't support me. The pricing sucked. They couldn't respond to RFP. Like, that is a very finger pointing dynamic. And if they're pointing fingers, I always say the only finger they should point is the one in the mirror, because at a lot of times it's still going to fall back on you. So I want them to have some accountability. You know, honestly, I didn't continue business development as much as I thought. I did this, I did that. That is so much more impactful to me because they're owning their stuff and not just delegating it and blaming others.
Yeah. Well, what would you say is, I normally ask the question, what's the one thing, and as I wrap up, what's the one thing that you made a mistake on early on, or even last year, whenever it was, that isn't a mistake, that was fundamental to how Pinnacle is today, right? Because I've asked the question and I learned that, well, everything kind of led us to here. I wouldn't change much.
Yep.
Is there any mistake you made, any decision you made that you're like, well, that was just kind of a dumb move, and if I could have avoided that, we'd still be here. We might be even better, that you can share, that hopefully somebody else building a business is like, hey, I'll just skip that little road bump?
Saying yes too much. And what I mean by that is, I think early on, we've all done this, where we've signed deals, taken on clients that probably didn't align for us because we needed wins, we needed revenue, we needed to do stuff. But what you realize is sometimes those subpar relationships will be more draining than they will be additions. So I think that you always have to understand how important business development is, a 24/7, 365 game. Don't ever get comfortable. Don't ever think that you have enough, right? And I think that it's a fine line because you don't want to take on too much where I can't service you, because that's a catch-22.
Yep.
But at the same time, be very picky of the people you partner with. And here's the other thing too. You always want to make decisions coming from the lens of, I want to be a partner, not a vendor, especially in freight. You know what vendors are?
Oh, that's such a great way to put it.
Vendors are the cheapest person on a certain day in a certain lane. I'm a commodity. I'm just that. And I get known for that. When I am a partner, I am an extension of you. I'm going to do whatever it takes to service you, even if that means I have to take a loss, even if that means I have to do certain things. I'm still going to play the long game and believe in our partnership. Because the power in relationships is for when you have to have hard conversations. Yeah. When I have to increase prices, when I have to take this or whatever. And I think people are so transactionally focused that it's going to shoot themselves in the foot.
And so if you say yes too often, then you don't have the capacity to even think about those things, and you end up in a catch-22. So that's good advice. I wanted to wrap this episode up and see if you're willing. What's your best podcast-friendly story from the industry? You don't have to name names, but of like the craziest recruiting story you have from one of these brokerages. It could be any topic. Just leave us with a good one.
Look, I don't know that it's good or bad, but like this is something that I think people didn't understand occurred, and it's messed up. I knew people that it came out that they were working for 2 places at once, collecting multiple salaries during the whole remote era. And they always mess up because they send a wrong email or something else. But for me, my mind doesn't just even operate that way. And some of the stuff I've seen like that blows my mind. Look, I'm all for side hustles and I'm all for that. But to be collecting 2 W-2 salaries from organizations and cross-referencing expense reports and all this stuff, again, logically, I'm just like, what in the heck were you doing? Look, I've seen that. If you want the truth, almost every Christmas party / conference, this is real talk, I will get a phone call. Brent, I love this guy, high producer, did something stupid. I need you to help him go land somewhere else. Well, number one, now that I know this information, how am I going to do that out of good faith? People make very unwise decisions. I'll be transparent, usually alcohol related. They don't realize the reputation damage that does, that will stick with you.
Oh, and in this industry for sure. Yeah.
I told you, Gabe, one text away, I can find out 90% of information on most people in the industry. Think how scary that is, man.
Well, I mean, I can attest to that. I was at Manifest and I ran into many people that I had working for me that no longer work for me. I ran into vendors that I had bad endings with, and there is no escaping being a bad partner or a bad person in this industry. You will catch up in short order. The only way to escape it is to continue to change MCs and LLCs and never go to conferences. Yeah. And then Brent will find you with a text message anyways. So, well, hey, I appreciate you giving me the time today. We went a little bit over an hour, but you're running a big business. I got to get back to running mine. So that's another episode of Let's Talk Logistics. Thanks, Brent.
Awesome.